If you glance at the clock tonight and it reads somewhere between 2:45 and 3:15, I want you to remember this video because what I'm about to tell you might be the most important 5 minutes you spend on your health all week. Here's something strange that almost nobody talks about. When sleep researchers ask older adults to keep a log of exactly when they wake up in the middle of the night, a huge cluster of answers falls into one narrow window. Not midnight, not 5 in the morning, that strange, specific stretch right around 3. And when something happens in the body with that kind of precision, night after night, it usually isn't random. Your body doesn't do random. It does patterns. It does signals. And tonight, I'm going to walk you through 6 of those signals, one by one, including 2 that almost never come up in a normal doctor's appointment, and one that has nothing to do with stress, anxiety, or getting older at all. So if you've been told your 3 a.m. wake-ups are just part of aging and left it at that, stay with me because I don't think that's the whole story, and I don't think you deserve to just accept it either. I'm Dr. Franklin, and this is Health Wellness. For years now, my whole approach has been the same. Give people over 60 real, honest, usable information about their bodies instead of vague reassurances. Not scary, not preachy, just the truth, explained the way I'd explain it to my own mother sitting across the kitchen table. Today we're talking about one of the most common things I hear in my practice. Waking up at almost the exact same time every single night, wide awake, heart maybe going a little fast, mind suddenly very alert, and no idea why. Before we get into it, I want you to do one small thing. Think back to the last time this happened to you. Was it a sudden jolt, like something startled you? A wave of heat? A racing heart for no clear reason? Or did you just open your eyes, calm but completely alert? Like a switch had been flipped? Hold on to that feeling because by the time we finish today, I think you'll recognize exactly which of these 6 things has been happening to you, and more importantly, what you can actually do about it starting tonight. Let's start with something most people have never even heard of because I think it deserves to be first, not last. The first thing I want you to understand is how your kidneys behave differently at night than they do during the day. Here's what almost nobody explains to patients. Your body produces a hormone called antidiuretic hormone, or ADH for short, and its entire job is to tell your kidneys to slow down urine production while you sleep. That's why a healthy young adult can sleep 8 hours without waking up to use the bathroom. Their body is essentially turning down the tap overnight. But here's the part that matters for anyone over 60. Research in sleep and aging has consistently observed that the nighttime release of this hormone weakens with age. Less of it gets released, and it doesn't hold steady through the whole night the way it once did. So your kidneys keep producing urine at something closer to a daytime pace, even at 3 in the morning. For some people, this shows up as an obvious urge to get up and go. But for a lot of people, it's much subtler than that. It's just enough bladder pressure to nudge you out of your deepest sleep and into a lighter stage. And that lighter stage is exactly when noise, light, or a passing thought is enough to wake you up completely, even if you never technically felt like you needed the bathroom. Think of it like a dam that used to hold back the river completely overnight and now has a few small leaks in it. The river isn't flooding, but it's enough to disturb the calm surface. If this sounds like you, here's what may help. Try shifting most of your fluid intake earlier in the day rather than right before bed, and if you take a diuretic or water pill, ask your doctor whether taking it earlier in the afternoon rather than in the evening might reduce this effect. Small timing shifts here can matter more than people expect. Now here's a second thing that almost never gets mentioned, and I think it deserves far more attention than it gets. Your blood sugar can quietly dip overnight, even if you're not diabetic. This surprises people every time I bring it up. Your body needs a steady trickle of glucose overnight to keep your brain and nervous system running smoothly while you sleep, and it gets that mostly from stored sugar in your liver, released slowly through the night. But if dinner was light, or early, or low in complex carbohydrates, or if you had wine or alcohol with dinner, which actually suppresses your liver's ability to release stored sugar, your blood sugar can drift down more than it should somewhere in the early hours of the morning. When your blood sugar dips too low, your body doesn't just let that happen quietly. It triggers a stress response. Adrenaline and cortisol get released to push your blood sugar back up, and that stress response is a very effective way to wake a person up. Racing heart, sudden alertness, sometimes a little shaky or sweaty. Sound familiar? A patient of mine, a retired school teacher in her 70s, described it to me almost exactly this way. Wide awake at 3, heart pounding, convinced something was wrong, but nothing showed up on her cardiac workup. When we looked closer at her evening habits, she'd started skipping her evening snack to eat healthier. Once she added a small, balanced bedtime snack back in, something like a few whole grain crackers with a bit of cheese, or a small handful of nuts, her 3 a.m. wake-ups became far less frequent within about 2 weeks. I want to be careful here. This is not medical advice specific to you, especially if you're managing diabetes, and any changes to eating patterns should go through your own doctor first. But for many people, a small protein and complex carb snack an hour or so before bed is worth discussing. If you're finding this useful so far, do me a favor and type the word awake in the comments. It helps me know how many of you are watching live, and it genuinely motivates me to keep making these. Now let's talk about your liver, because this is where things get interesting from a completely different angle. Your liver isn't just sitting there quietly at night. Traditional medical systems have talked about organ activity cycles for centuries, and modern chronobiology, the science of the body's internal clocks, actually backs up something similar. The liver appears to hit peak activity somewhere in that same 1 to 3 a.m. window, working overtime to filter your blood and break down whatever you consume during the day, including alcohol, fatty foods, and many medications. As we get older, the liver simply doesn't process things as efficiently as it once did. So, if it's dealing with a heavy, late dinner, a glass of wine, or several medications that all get metabolized through the liver, it may be working harder than usual right during that exact window when your sleep is naturally at its lightest. I like to picture it as a factory that runs its loudest, busiest shift at 1 a.m. It doesn't have to make noise you can consciously hear. The activity itself seems to correlate with lighter, more easily disrupted sleep in that stretch of the night. What can help? Try to finish eating at least 3 hours before bed. Keep your last meal lighter on fat, and go easy on alcohol in the evening, since even one drink adds meaningfully to your liver's overnight workload. Here's the part I really want you to pay attention to, because I think it's the single most overlooked piece of this entire puzzle: magnesium. This mineral is involved in literally hundreds of processes in your body, and one of its jobs is calming your nervous system down and supporting the production of melatonin, the hormone that keeps you asleep through the night. Here's the problem. Magnesium levels tend to quietly decline as we age. We absorb less of it from food, we lose more of it through the kidneys, and a long list of very common medications, including certain blood pressure medications, acid reducers, and diuretics, can deplete it even further without anyone realizing it. When magnesium runs low, your nervous system becomes what I'd describe as twitchy. In things that shouldn't wake you up, a small sound, a shift in temperature, a passing dream, suddenly do. And once you're awake, your brain has a harder time powering back down, because the very mineral responsible for that calming signal is running low. I had a patient, 71 years old, sharp as anyone I know, who had been waking at 3 a.m. for close to 2 years and had simply assumed it was anxiety. It wasn't until we checked her magnesium levels and found them sitting at the very low end of normal that we had an explanation. After a conversation with her doctor about a gentler, well-absorbed form of magnesium, she reported sleeping through most nights within about 3 weeks. I want to be clear. You should never start supplementing without talking to your own doctor first, especially if you have any kidney concerns, since your doctor needs to know your full picture. But it's absolutely worth asking specifically about magnesium and getting your levels checked rather than guessing. And from a food standpoint, dark leafy greens, pumpkin seeds, almonds, and black beans are all excellent natural sources worth adding to your plate regardless. Quick pro tip most people never hear. If you do get the green light from your doctor to try a magnesium supplement, taking it with food in the early evening rather than right before bed tends to reduce stomach upset while still giving your body time to use it before sleep. Now let's talk about something that sounds almost unbelievable the first time you hear it, but the science behind it has grown enormously over the past decade. Your gut is in constant conversation with your brain, and that conversation doesn't stop when you fall asleep. There's a real physical communication pathway called the gut-brain axis, running through your vagus nerve, your immune system, and the billions of bacteria living in your digestive tract. What surprises most people is that gut activity has its own overnight rhythm, and some of that activity actually peaks during the night. When the balance of bacteria in your gut is disrupted, something that becomes more common with age due to diet changes, reduced activity, and medications like acid reducers, it can generate low-grade inflammatory signals that travel straight up that gut-brain highway. Researchers have connected these imbalances to more fragmented sleep and more nighttime waking. I think of it almost like your gut sending a short, vague text message to your brain at 3 a.m. that just says, "Something's a little off here. It's not an emergency." But your brain, already in a lighter stage of sleep at that hour, picks it up anyway and wakes you. What tends to help here is surprisingly simple. More variety in your fiber sources through the day, things like different vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, plain yogurt or kefir a few times a week, and easing up on large or sugary meals close to bedtime, since that kind of eating tends to increase overnight gut fermentation right when you're trying to be at your calmest. If you've made it this far, take a second and hit that like button. It really does help this reach more people who are lying awake tonight, wondering what's happening to them, and it costs you nothing but a second of your time. Now let's talk about hormones, because there's a quiet imbalance here that most standard checkups completely miss. Your thyroid produces hormones that regulate your metabolism, and like nearly everything else in your body, thyroid activity follows its own daily rhythm, with thyroid-stimulating hormone, or TSH, tending to rise in the late night and early morning hours as your body prepares for the day ahead. In someone with a perfectly balanced thyroid, this rise is smooth and unnoticeable. But a significant number of older adults have what's called subclinical thyroid imbalance, technically within normal range on a basic test, but not truly optimized. And in those cases, that early morning hormone rise can become sharper than it should be. When that happens alongside chronically elevated stress hormones like cortisol, the combination can produce that unmistakable wide-awake, heart-racing, mind-spinning feeling in the small hours of the morning. I remember a gentleman, 68 years old, who'd been waking between 3 and 4 a.m. for over a year. His basic blood work always came back normal. It wasn't until he specifically asked for a fuller thyroid panel, not just TSH but additional markers, that a pattern emerged. After some adjustments made with his doctor, his early morning waking resolved almost entirely within a couple of months. If your 3 a.m. wake-ups come with a racing heart, an inner sense of heat, or a restless feeling you can't quite explain, it's worth specifically asking your doctor for a complete thyroid evaluation rather than settling for the basic screening test alone, since that single test can miss patterns that matter in older adults. Before we get to the last piece, and I do think this last one may be the most important, let me ask you something. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city or your country in the comments. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me feel connected to this community I've built. Here's the last piece, and I saved it for the end on purpose because I think it quietly undoes everything else we've just talked about if it's not addressed. It's your bedroom itself, not what you do before bed, but what's actually happening in that room while you're asleep in it. Start with light. I don't mean a bright lamp or a television left blaring. I mean the small, easy-to-ignore light sources, the standby light on a television, the tiny blue glow of a cable box, the green light on a power strip, the glowing numbers of a digital clock across the room. Research published in sleep journals has found that even very low levels of ambient light in a bedroom can interfere with melatonin production and increase the number of times a person wakes during the later stages of the night. Your eyes contain specialized cells that detect light even through closed eyelids, and at 3 a.m. during your lightest stage of sleep, that small signal can be enough to tip you from light sleep into full wakefulness. Then there's sound, not loud, jarring sound, but the subtle, irregular kind. A refrigerator compressor clicking on, a car passing outside, the house settling as the temperature shifts overnight. Your brain in the second half of the night is unusually sensitive, sitting close to the surface of consciousness, and an irregular, low-level sound during this window can catch it off guard and pull you fully awake. I like to think of your sleeping brain at that hour like a very light sleeper in a quiet apartment building. During the day, the noise and activity don't register because you're busy and alert. But at 3 a.m., the quietest moment of the whole night, every hum, drip, and flicker gets amplified far beyond its actual size. Your goal should be to make your bedroom as close as possible to a sensory blank space, dark, cool, quiet, and free of unnecessary electronics. The easiest place to start tonight: cover or switch off every small LED light in your bedroom. Even a strip of dark tape over the ones you can't turn off works fine. Move your phone across the room instead of onto the nightstand. And if outside noise is an issue, a simple white noise machine or fan can mask the irregular sounds that tend to be the real problem, rather than trying to achieve complete silence, which is often harder to maintain all night anyway. So let's bring this all together, because I think when you look at it as a whole, a very different picture emerges than "you're just getting older." We talked about your kidneys and a weakening overnight hormone that used to hold urine production down through the night. We talked about blood sugar quietly dipping in the early morning hours and triggering a stress response that jolts you awake. We talked about your liver's overnight workload peaking at exactly the time your sleep is most fragile. We talked about magnesium, one of the most overlooked and correctable pieces of this entire puzzle. We talked about your gut sending signals to your brain through a communication highway most people have never heard of. We talked about a subtle thyroid and adrenal imbalance that a standard blood test can completely miss. And finally, we talked about the bedroom environment itself, the light and sound most people never even consider a factor. In my experience, it's rarely just one of these things acting alone. Usually it's two or three, layered on top of each other, each one nudging your sleep a little lighter until 3 a.m. becomes the tipping point every single night. The encouraging part is this: you don't need surgery, you don't need an expensive device, and you don't need to overhaul your entire life to start making progress here. You need awareness, a conversation with your own doctor about which of these might apply to you, and the willingness to test one small change at a time. I want to close with something I hear from patients again and again once their sleep starts to improve. It's rarely just, "I feel more rested." It's something bigger than that. It's, "I feel like myself again." Sleep isn't separate from the rest of your health. It's the foundation everything else is built on. Your memory, your mood, your balance, your immune system, even your patience with the people you love, all of it rests on the quality of your sleep. You are not too old to get this back. You have earned real, restful nights. And I genuinely believe that for a good number of you watching right now, one of the 6 things we covered today is the exact piece your body has been waiting for you to notice. Tonight, pick just one thing. Cover the LED lights in your bedroom, or ask your doctor about checking your magnesium, or move dinner a little earlier. Just one. Give it a week and pay close attention to what changes. And if this video helped you understand something about your own body that you didn't know before today, please share it with someone. A spouse, a friend, a sibling, who's also lying awake at 3 a.m. wondering why. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can hand someone is the right piece of information at the right moment. Remember, this video is for informational and educational purposes only. Always consult with your personal doctor before making any changes to your health, your medications, or your supplements. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe to Health Wellness and hit the notification bell so you never miss a health tip. See you in the next video.